Hey friends, welcome to the Health Simple Show. I'm your host, Kyle Reedhead, and I interview health and wellness experts from around the world to help you live healthy, happy, and stress-free. Now don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and if you have any questions about anything we talk about through this episode, just comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Health Simple Radio. Today, I'm joined with Ashley Wiles, who's the founder and head coach at Soul Girls. Ashley, first of all, welcome to the show.
Yay, thank you so much for having me.
Ashley is actually a friend of mine that I've met here in Bali. I've been here for about 6 weeks or so, and I think I met you in my first couple of weeks here. But Ashley is doing some really interesting things in the health space and a lot different than I think anyone else that I've spoken to on the podcast. So I'm super excited to have her join me here. Hopefully the Wi-Fi stays good. You never know what's going on here in Bali. But actually, why don't you start by just explaining what Soul Girls is?
Yeah, so Soul Girls is empowerment programs for girls ages 5 to 12 and mentorship and leadership programs for girls 13 and up. And then a couple years ago, we started Soul for Boys too. And so we do have a boys program for young boys, pretty much the same age groups, 5 to 11 usually, to talk about. So the way it runs is it's a 9-week program where they train to run a 5-kilometer fun run. The little ones only do 3K, but they're still like working towards a goal to be mentally and physically prepared for it. And then they're paired with a mentor. So we have high school, university students that are mentors or just cool people from the community who want to share with kids. And they learn the tools to talk about mental health and anxiety and stress and friendships and values-based decision-making and goals. So all this like cool stuff while actually like completing a goal as well.
That's so awesome, and you know, such a great passion to have, I guess. What was it that made you want to help children and sort of mentor them to you know, whether it's getting past mental health issues or just kind of bettering who they are? What got you into that space?
Yeah, I feel like my story started like when I was a kid and I was dealing with my own body image issues, particularly around grade 6, grade 7. Girls go through growth spurts and body changing. And it really it actually deters you from doing sports often. You get cut from teams and it's actually like really, really crazy. And so I think my story started there where like my legs got really big and I don't have that big legs, but like in my mind, I had like the biggest legs. And I didn't want anybody to see my legs, so I would like shop in the boys department and wear boys clothes, and I'm just like super self-conscious about like my own body. And I also have freckles. I don't know if you can see them, but also like just having like spots. You have freckles too?
I do, yeah, of course.
And so like I was just really embarrassed to have like spots all over my face, and people would be like, "They're so cute," and I'm like, "Oh." Right. And so I think that's where my story started, but it wasn't until I was actually in my 20s and I was in an abusive relationship, and really like it was really, really hard for my mental health. And I started struggling with depression and anxiety like I'd never experienced before, and total loss of self-worth. And like physically my body was super healthy. Like I was working as a life coach and a health coach and like really like helping people accomplish their goals at high altitude. And it was like super fun on the outside, but in the inside, I was like really, really struggling with my own mental health. And I feel very fortunate because there was a girl in Canada in 2012. Her name was Amanda Todd. Do you know that name?
Amanda Todd. I don't think so, although it kind of does ring a bell.
You'd probably know if we pulled it up on YouTube. Amanda Todd was 15 years old, and she created this video in September 2012. And it was like she was telling this story in black and white with these cue cards, and just like showing these cue cards of like telling the story about being bullied and cyberbullied and dealing with mental health and just feeling like she needed someone. And a month later, she committed suicide.
Wow.
And she was only 15. And so this arrived in my Facebook feed at a time where I was like at my lowest of low points. And it arrived and it was crazy, in Facebook when people like post, like everybody's posting it and you're like, what happened? And it did go viral. So 28 million people saw it after she committed suicide in that first week.
Wow.
And so because she was from like kind of my hometown, it like really shook me. And I was like, what? Like, how come this girl who's 15 years old and me who's like, in my late 20s, how come like we're both struggling with the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And how come we both feel like this? And it became very clear that I had two paths that I could take. And one was like the same path she took. And the other one was like doing something totally different. And I had to get myself out of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved back to Canada and launched Soul Girls, kind of dove into the research to find out who girls were, what were they all about. And I think running really saved my life, like just immersing myself in the running community and dealing with my own mental health through physical activity.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing that you chose the second route, which was to do something about it rather than, the other way. Mental health is an issue for so many people. And you think about it, we hear about it a lot anyway with adults, right? We're super busy with work. We are in these crazy relationships. There's all these things happening in life that cause us to have anxiety and depression and whatever else. But, I think you never really think about it in younger children. Is it a big problem in young children? Like, is this something that a lot of children are dealing with?
Yeah, mental health is a huge thing. And it's actually got a lot of attention in the last decade. In Canada, especially, we're doing like a huge, let's talk about it at least for mental health. But in terms of kids, like kids as young as 8 years old are committing suicide. And like, if you remember being 8, like there is just a lot that happens between like 8 and the rest of your life. And so that's a really scary situation. And unfortunately, suicide is after Amanda Todd committed suicide, it was I think it was about 1 million people posted on YouTube, "Am I pretty or am I ugly?" And so we're searching for this like external source, and most of these people are teenagers. The hospitals, I know, at least in my hometown in Canada, they tripled in intake in 2013, 2014 from kids, and they actually didn't have anywhere to put them because the hospitals weren't equipped to deal with teenagers because they weren't like pediatrics problems, and they weren't like psychotic mental health problems. They were just like there's cutting and there's overdosing and there's all these things. So they're dealing with mental health issues, but they didn't have a space to put them or people to deal with them. And I think in the last 5 years it's certainly gotten better. However, for the rates, like suicide is only second to accidents as the leading cause for young people in Canada, which is pretty crazy. So like in the past 13 years, almost 6,000 Canadian children and youth have committed suicide, which is like some pretty scary stuff.
So I mean, you've obviously mentored a lot of kids, I assume, and you've taught others how to mentor kids. What are the main complaints or what are the main concerns that kids are having these days? I assume social media probably has something to do with it if they're on there at whatever age, but what do you find are the main concerns?
Yeah. So the number one thing for kids is inclusion. So like when you think about like what adults go through anxiety with, and usually like if I was to ask you one thing that you think adults have anxiety about, what do you think it would be?
Money. Maybe
yeah.
money. Maybe,
yeah, 100%. Totally. Adults worry about money. Kids worry about friendships. Like that is their world. It's the number one thing is being included and feeling safe and feeling good. And our safety scale as we grow older, especially like after 18, changes. So we need finances. We need to keep ourselves like financially okay. But when we're kids, it's like you're spending 8 hours a day with your with your
Peers, yeah.
friends, with the people at your school or whatever it is that you do during the day. And so not feeling included in that group can be the difference between a good and a bad day.
Mm.
And so anxiety is huge. Anxiety about friendships and inclusion and would be like the number one thing.
It makes sense, I guess. When I was younger, I think I went through a similar thing. And I was bullied when I was young. What grade would that have been? I think grade 7 or 8. I think we had the principal had to call in my group of friends, and the guy who was bullying me. I was a little kid back then. I was really skinny, really short. So the guy that was bullying me was a little bit bigger, and so that definitely bothered me. And I think it was a similar thing. I wasn't really fitting in with the group, even though I had some really good friends in the group, but he was just kind of bigger. So I would, sometimes I'd go home for lunch and just eat at home because I lived close to the school. And so I think I can definitely relate to that and see where that could be the issue. And then, now into adulthood, it changes to finances and I'm okay with being alone. But so running is something that you're doing to help them. Is that the main, I guess, thing that you do with Soul Girls, is to get them active and to get them moving? Is that sort of your not treatment, but your the way to sort of alleviate the anxiety and the things that they're doing?
Totally. Yeah. So I think like one thing that we forget to talk about sometimes in like when we start talking about mental health is that every single person has a mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so therefore we all have mental health. So having mental health doesn't mean that you have bipolar or that you're schizophrenic. It simply means like you have a mind and therefore like it needs to be taken care of just like you need to take care of your physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And they go hand in hand. And like you can't really have physical health without your mental health. Like they do go together. So even when I was like super physically healthy, like I wouldn't be able to reach my potential because I was like hurting my body in order to get over the mental pain that I was going through. But it can also be like a super great pain reliever. So when we're talking about physical activity, like basic, I made up that word. I like to make up words.
That's good.
Basically, physical literacy, like basic movement of your body, of understanding like I can throw, I can jump, I can run. Kids are super good at excluding themselves from sport as soon as they understand that they're not good enough or they're not as good as somebody else. Like kids are so smart. And we see, and the unfortunate part is that as soon as they understand this, that they're not as good as somebody else and they compare themselves, this mindset will go with them all the way into adulthood. And we know, like in particular for girls, they have a 10% chance of being active if they're not by the time they're 25, if they're not active by the time they're 10 to 12.
Wow.
So if we have kids dropping out of sports, like they're 10 years old and they didn't make the swim team or whatever, they take that all in, and at a time when they most need those cognitive functions and abilities to communicate and inclusion, they are going to like self-exclude all the way through, often, most likely, all the way through their teenhoods into their 20s, in which case it changes. And then it's like, oh yeah, maybe I could do that, or maybe I could try again, or actually I need to lose weight. Yeah. And then it changes the dialogue. But that's like a really, really common story that we hear in particular for girls, especially that 10 to 12 years age, like that's when they're going to have their period and their bodies are going to change. Yeah. And so like physically their bodies are different for a whole year while their body like adjusts to all the changes before they can go forward. So what we do at Soul Girls is really just give them basic physical literacy, like inclusion and fun and mentorship to love running. So that like, even if they drop out of soccer or swimming or ski team or whatever it is that they're doing, even if that happens, they can still do the most basic movements with their bodies to get themselves moving. Because we know that like it only takes 15 minutes a day of physical activity in order to what's the word I'm looking for? To mitigate depression, like to make us feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Physical activity is something that even myself, I mean, if I'm stressed or if I'm anxious about something, I mean, I go to the gym, right? Or I don't really run all that often, but I will go for a run or, sometimes, but I'll do something active. And, there's a lot of reasons of why that helps, hormonal changes and, releasing endorphins and so many other things that physiologically help, but it's also just, it changes your mindset too, right? You get that confidence after you've left the gym or you've gone for a run. So I mean, that's something that I could see being very valuable for a kid who's, in their teenagers and may not have confidence, may not be confident in anything because they may not be the smartest kid and they didn't, let's say they got cut from whichever team they tried out for. So I can see just being physically active helping in that sense as well.
100%. And it's like less than 1% of people are going to be professional athletes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
we're not training kids to be like the best in their sport. We're just like creating like a really solid foundation so that they can be active and have fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And running, like, often people aren't runners like you. You're like, like I might run here and there,
Yeah.
but it's not my main jam. And I hear that from people all the time. They're like, oh, I'm not a runner. I'm like, maybe I'm a jogger, maybe, or, like all of these things. But like reality is that running is the simplest, like easiest, cheapest way to help your mental health.
Yeah.
Like literally walking or running, just like getting your heart rate to go a little bit higher than usual. So easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So easy.
It is. And it helps
cheap.
so much.
Right. And so it doesn't matter like if you're a traveler like you or wherever you are in the world or however old you are too, like it's something that's very, very accessible for people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And now, so let's say you have a child, maybe you're a parent or you're a teacher and you have kids that have some sort of mental health issue, whether it's anxiety because of friends or, whatever it is that's going on. I mean, so running is a solution to get them active. What else are you doing with children? Is there, as a mentor, are you, speaking with them and having certain discussions? What other kind of things do you do to sort of help them, get out of the funk or get out of that mindset that they're in?
Yeah, mentorship is like my favorite topic to talk about because I had a mentor when I was young. Did you have a mentor at all?
I did not.
Do you have a
No,
mentor?
I did not. Just my parents.
And most people, yeah, and that's great if your parents are like, mentorship type people. My parents were not. Like I clashed with my mom like crazy.
Yeah.
We both had like very strong personalities and like we fought all the time.
Yeah.
And my dad, he was great, but he was like, he was like a mentor in his own way, but he didn't help me like with situations or like inspire me to like how to get through things.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about, Soul Girls is we've created like a mentorship piece where girls ages 5 to 12 can come to this program and be mentored or meet like kind of like cooler older girls, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So like girls that have been there, done that in their place and have gotten through it. And now they're doing like all this cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this like for our teens too, like I get to mentor them and I'm like, cool, like I've been there, done that. And now I like run my own business. I travel the world and I have a great time. I like run Ironmans and that's like, I hope that that's inspiring to them or there's like a little piece of my story that's inspiring to them. So yeah, mentorship is so crazy. Like how effective it is on really changing lives. And 1 in 3 young people will grow up without a mentor. So those are like pretty interesting stats. But if you are lucky enough to have a mentor, you're 55% more likely to enroll in college. That's cool.
Wow.
You're 78% more likely to volunteer regularly. You're 90% more interested in becoming a mentor, so like helping others. And this is the coolest one. If you have a mentor as a young person, you are 130 times more likely to hold a leadership position in the future.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing, actually.
Isn't that crazy? So like in my experience, like growing up as a girl with body image issues and school issues and, whatever. I remember like very specifically one day I was like, I want to take piano lessons. I want to learn how to play piano. And my mom was like, we don't even have a piano. Like what the what?
Yeah.
And I like found this poster at school like on the board. And I was like, I want to take piano lessons. And there was a piano teacher and I was like, perfect. And so I feel very fortunate because I was put into this piano class. And it was one-on-one time with this piano teacher. And my parents bought me this like tiny little keyboard. Like it wasn't longer than my arm. And I was like, that'll do. Like, I'm going to learn how to play. I'm going to be a pianist. And I don't know like what inspired me down this road, but I was like, I'm going. And it just so turns out that my piano teacher was like the coolest person I've ever met in my entire life. She was like, I was probably about 10 and she was like 15 or 16, and she was already running her own business, this piano teaching business. When she was 16, she got this yellow sports car with like the roof came off, and she listened to like punk rock music, and like she's just like so cool. And I didn't have an older sibling, so I just like thought that she was like everything. And like our lessons ended up being a lot more than just piano, especially as I grew up. I stayed in piano for 7 years, I think. Oh. And like weekly going to piano lessons and meeting with this teacher. Her name was Rochelle. And obviously she got older and her business changed, and I got older and our conversations changed too. So it wasn't just about like doing piano. It was about like, man, my mom's and like this is happening, and oh my God, the boys and this and the school and all these things. And she would just be able to like meet me at my level and be like, yeah, sometimes your mom is like that. Like, instead of making me wrong, she would like validate me as a person. Mm-hmm. And it just made me feel so amazing. And so I'm so grateful for her. And I wish that every single person, every single child especially, had that experience of somebody who really makes them feel valid and heard, and gives them some tools to be able to, get through the problems, even if that's just like that simple validation or being heard.
So it sounds like, and just listening to you and listening to how just, a piano teacher impacted your life. It's not really being a mentor is like being a psychologist for a kid. It's more just like being a friend, right? Finding a friend, but it's someone who's older and wiser that can just, that can sort of just talk to them and get down to their level and just provide, some experience and some advice in that way. So really anyone can be a mentor if they want to try to help out, someone who's younger.
Absolutely. Like we all have a kid somewhere in our lives, whether that's like a niece or a nephew or a friend's kid or a friend's of a friend's kid or a coworker's kid. Like there's at some point in your life, like you're going to come across some sort of child, and, you have an opportunity to create a bond with that person and, be the best version of yourself and show up as like, I'm living my best life, and I like can't wait to share that with like everybody around me, because the person, it might not even be a kid, it might be an adult, and I'm sure you're probably a mentor to a lot of people as well, and like your journey, right? And there's a difference between like inspiration and then mentorship, and it's great to have those people that inspire us, but also the people that are just willing to listen and be there for you, regularly or unregularly, but like when you really need them, can help you kind of navigate what I call finding your happy pace.
I like that. So with Soul Girls, do you have mentors kind of all over? I don't know if it's just in Canada or where else it is in the world, but do you have mentors that, let's say someone in a certain city right now says, oh, my daughter's been struggling and I'd like to get them a mentor. Do you have mentors just available? Is that kind of how it's set up, or do you do camps, or how does it all kind of work?
So I'm based in Vancouver in Canada. Right now I'm in Bali, but our programs are based in Vancouver in Canada, and we have coaches that run weekly sessions. So we run them 3 times a year, starting in September, January, and April. And we'll run a 9-week program training to run a 5-kilometer fun run. So this is run by our coach, who is kind of like the main mentor. And then we'll have other what we call soul tiers, which are volunteer mentors that are a wide range of ages who come and help weekly as well. And for this particular age, like groups are really great because it creates like a whole different kind of inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about the mentorship, it's also about like a group mentorship and like coming together and sharing like things that are happening. And then we license our curriculum. So we have programs, I run programs in Vancouver, and then we have licensees kind of outside of the greater Vancouver area into larger BC. And then we have another one in Calgary and Cochrane. And then also in Australia, we have licensee down in Australia. So yeah, the goal is to grow across Canada and also in Australia so that we can have more girls receiving positive mental health and tools.
And that's awesome, by the way. Congrats on getting into Australia. And so you've also started up one for boys. And so I have to ask, I mean, we've a lot of what you've talked about is on the girls' side of things. So a focus on girls, which is completely understandable. I think boys don't get life easier, but just things are just less, we just don't care about as much as girls do. But what I'm wondering is, because I got to ask, because I'm a guy, and so I got to support the boys out there. Are you finding a lot of the same similarities with boys as girls too? And in those age groups, are they struggling a lot as well with anxiety and these mental health issues, or is it much higher rates in females?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. Boys suffer just as much as girls, but they suffer differently. So one really interesting thing is that like around the age of puberty, like girls' bodies are going to like transform. They get wider hips, they get, they grow boobs, they're like get a little bit slower, they start bleeding, they're like, what the what? Whereas like when boys go through puberty, like several years later, they get like strong, more muscular, like more toned, right? Their voice gets deeper, like there's like sexual peak goes like straight up. So like you think about this, you're like, what? And so like physically our bodies are so different, like our physiology is so different. And so what we're experiencing also is different. And girls often experience that a lot earlier. But boys also really, same thing, like they are going to suffer with very similar, anxieties, maybe about different things. Okay. But it's still there. Exclusion, even it can be body image. It really can be anything.
Yeah.
And I think probably a lot about Movember.
Yeah.
And what's cool about like the Movember movement is it's all about like they've changed it from being about like at the beginning I think it was about prostate cancer, but it's moved like really this year they brought a really big game to talk about mental health, specifically men's mental health, which I thought was really neat because they highlighted like most of like the stats around what that actually means for men's suicide and whatnot. And I think that all this, with the Me Too movement and with the general things that we're going through as a society, I think that there's a lot of like really strong women that are coming up. And I think that this is like a really great time to work with kids so that they are like rounded and balanced and have like awesome tools so that, they can rise up the boys and the girls, being respectful and kind and, just being really great humans.
Absolutely. And I mean, like you said, if they get mentorship, if they go through something like this at a younger age, then it makes all the difference when they're older. And so, it's by far the most important time. This is when they're doing all their learning, they're having all these changes. And if you can set them up for success at such an early age, then what an impact that would be on their life, right? One of the questions I had just as you were talking there, do you want to, if you're going to get a mentor, is it best to have a male mentor, a boy, and then a female, like a woman mentor, a girl, or have you seen mentors be the opposite sex and it still work the same?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So in our particular programs, we do gender specific because I think that it's hard for a man to understand what a girl is going through at that time. Not impossible, but it's a lot easier when you have that experiential knowledge. And with the boys, I find like, even when we look at the school systems, like traditionally teachers are more likely female than male. And so they're still receiving, quality adults in their lives.
Yeah.
What I saw a lot of, especially in Vancouver, was that we have a lot of like immigration. And so sometimes one parent is not there. Like one parent might live in Asia and one parent lives and so that child misses out on that mentorship or that that guidance from, say, the male father figure. And so that's where like I found having like a gender specific mentor was really incredible, because it didn't replace it, but it added extra value to be like, oh, cool, he's kind of like me, and you see yourself in that person's eyes. But that being said, I mean, as like a business person, I have male mentors. Most of my mentors are actually male. And I mean,
still works
so
great.
Yeah. And I don't even look at the gender, honestly. I'm like, they are a man, but it doesn't matter to me because they have this cool experience that I really want to learn from.
Now, you've just written a new book that I think just was released. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that book is?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Kyle, I just spent the last 2 years writing a book called Find Your Happy Pace. And it was, I spent all the money, right? Like doing and getting it all done and like formatting and writing and, oh God. And then, I just like let it sit for a while. I was like, I don't know why. And it was, really talking about my own story and kind of like a self-help type thing. And I don't know why, like I just couldn't get to it. I couldn't make it happen. And so this past December, I went to Hawaii and I was there for 15 days. I stayed in the jungle. And I was like, I'm just going to finish these edits. I got like this amount of time and I'm going to get it done. And I spent the first couple of days like doing all the edits, reading through all of the things and like really properly like putting the finishing touches on it. And I got to the end and I had these beautiful, amazing people who edited my book and went through it. And I got to the end and I was like, this is the wrong book. Like, I'm not supposed to write this book right now. Like this book was for me and it helped me like find my voice. But this book is not the book I'm supposed to publish. And I know he spent so much time and effort on this thing. And then I literally whatever the digital version of ripping something up is, that's what I did. And I wrote a new book. In the next 10 days, I think I was there, I wrote a brand new book, and it's a cross between self-help and a graphic novel. And it's really aimed towards girls ages 10 to 18. And kind of like that preteen, teen age. And the goal, and it teaches five life lessons through mentorship, and it talks about physical activity and stuff that girls are going through. So yeah, I'm super stoked about it. It just launched on Indiegogo less than 2 weeks ago. And we've sold about 150 books so far. So I'm so stoked that more girls are going to receive mentorship and I think they'll be able to self-identify with the characters in the book too.
That's absolutely amazing. As if it took you 2 years to write one book and then 10 days to write the second book. That's just the way that it goes, I guess. Now you said five was it rules for life or guidelines?
Yes. 5 life lessons. 5
life lessons. That's it. Can you share a couple of them?
Totally. So the main character's name is Eva, and Eva is 14 years old, and she gets bullied. She trips on the soccer ball, and somebody puts it online and kind of makes fun of her, and everybody sees it and is laughing. And so she feels like crap. And meanwhile, she wanted to try out for the soccer team. And so she's having her dreams totally crushed. And she's like, that's never going to happen because clearly I'm a loser. And everybody thinks so. And so she's totally distraught. It's a crisis and her world is kind of coming to an end. And so she's going to learn these 5 life lessons as she's really fortunate because she has a really great school counselor who hooks her up with a mentor. And this mentor is just this cooler older girl that's kind of been there. And I feel like it's a little bit of me put into both characters. Okay. She's a businesswoman who loves to run. And and anyway, so she learns these 5 life lessons. And one of the lessons she learns is that she can't control others. And I think like often, we're always trying to control situations and control people, whether that's in relationships or friendships. And, these are life lessons that we're learning all the way through life.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal in this book is that, we learn these lessons. It's called a guidebook, A Girl's Guide to Finding Her Happy Pace. So they can come back to these lessons and be like, oh yeah, like, aha, and you might have these aha moments over and over again in life. And that's just the way it goes. And then she learns that she has value, like that she's worthy. And that's lesson number 2. And that's really cool too, because, I think I talk to so many adults who don't understand that they have value, outside of monetary, tangible things. Especially, I think we see this a lot in Canada or in America. We're like, I got all the cars, I got the great condo, I've got like, all these hairbrushes and makeup or whatever that I spent thousands of dollars on. And, we forget that like what really means, like what really is value is like, actually, I'm really kind and generous and I love helping other people. And that goes like way farther than, what somebody else can give you or you can buy with money. And so that's just an example of these lessons that she's going to learn and kind of go through and have these little aha moments as she does.
I love that. And I wasn't a big reader when I was younger. And I wasn't a troubled kid. I'm not going to say that, but I didn't do well in school. I wasn't, I was, en route to be a carpenter and just kind of work in, as a laborer. And I got up to a lot of mischief when I was in high school and just, and I never read. I never really was mindful about what I was doing. I never really had a whole lot of lessons or any of that kind of stuff. And then, I finally one day kind of changed things and things started to turn, and I ended up going to secondary school or post-secondary school. I ended up, starting to read books often. That's when I really started to learn lessons like that. And it was a lot of it was from reading self-help books. And so I think reading can be so powerful. I mean, reading one is just great for your mind. It's good to just sort of, relax you, especially if you have anxiety or stress. But the lessons that you can learn from a book, especially if, you reread it over and over, you can take and use in life. And so I think a book is such an amazing way and an impactful way to impact so many children, right? So good for you for getting that book done in 10 days.
Yeah, thank you. And you know what, like, I think, if you don't have a mentor when you are young, or your kid, I don't know if you have parents on here, but, if your kid doesn't have, or, isn't set up really, or if you just like, don't like physical activity as an adult, like there's lots of people that are like, I don't want to run, but I want my kid to run. Like, how do I like, set them up? With these tools. We don't always agree with our parents, right? Like sometimes our habits are totally different from our parents. And you might like really like building Legos and, being an engineer, and your parents have no idea about that. Like I was like, I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, but my parents were like teachers, and they just had no knowledge of what that was all about. And so books are so great, especially like this book is super tangible, like really easy to read and really digestible. And I'm making it black and white inside, so like people can color it and stuff too. We'll probably have some like different contests about that. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I think that most of us aren't very fortunate to have mentors. But this could be, at least a starting point.
Absolutely. And so you said it's on Indiegogo. I'll get the link from you, but if you want to, I don't know if you know the link or if it's too long, I'll put it in the show notes. But if you want to say the link, that way the listeners can get right to it.
Yeah. So on my website, it's Soul Girls, SOLE girls.org. And then the link is / find your happy pace.
Okay.
And that'll direct you straight to the Indiegogo.
Perfect. I'll put the link in the show notes. Now, I don't have any more questions about this, but is there anything that we missed that you feel that you need to get out there that people need to know when it comes to mental health and children?
Yeah, I think that all adults We have an opportunity to be, whether it's mentors or, whether you're a business owner or, whatever it is, like we have an opportunity to really help the future generation to change lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I really want to encourage, whether it's men, like sometimes we just don't know how to do that. Like, how do I get in touch with kids so that I can share my story? And I think that's what Soul Girls and Soul Boys is. And I'm always looking for new coaches and licensees to just get involved and say, I want to start a program in my small town in wherever, Grand Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
Or, wherever it is that you are, because certainly there's kids there too. And there's always an opportunity to create more community. And especially in the health community, whether it's mental health or physical health, we all need more people, just to say, hey, can I go to the gym with you? Or, can we go to the pool together? Or what workout are you doing? Can I join? Because that makes the health and the connection so much easier,
Mm-hmm.
and so much better for our greater world. So you taking care of you means that we can take care of the rest of the world. So, yeah.
And you know what is really cool about this, I think, is, even myself, I know I have a lot to offer children to help mentor them and to help grow, but it's something that I never really thought that I had, because I don't have kids. I don't have a lot of younger kid cousins that I'm close with. I'm in Bali, so I'm not around them anyway. Kids just aren't really that in my life all that often. So I never really think that, hey, this is something that I could do, until I spoke with you and learned what you were doing. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And, I think I do have a lot to offer, and there's definitely a way that I can help as well. So I think everyone can help, children in some sort of way. So it's kind of, you brought that light in my eyes to be able to realize that. So I absolutely love, I love that you're doing that, and I love that you've created this. I think it's, it's needed, obviously. So, appreciate you kind of, taking that leap of faith and jumping into making this all a thing, a reality. Now, if people want to learn more from you and they want to follow you or, reach out to you in any way, where do they find you on the interwebs?
Oh man, I'm everywhere on the interwebs. Facebook, everybody can find me on Facebook, but Instagram's probably the easiest. I'm at Eva Runs, EVARUNS, and Soul Girls is SOLE_girls. I'm on both of those ones, and on Facebook and LinkedIn and on my website, soulgirls.org.
So
on YouTube. I'm everywhere.
So, okay, I have one question left that I ask all the guests that come on my podcast. So before we get off, I'm going to ask you that. So actually, you've been through a health journey yourself, and whether this be physical or mental, it's something that you've been going through for years, I'm sure. If you were to go back to the very beginning of when you first started that journey, and you were to forget everything that you've learned in your life, what would be the one piece of advice that you now would want to tell yourself if you were just starting over?
My one piece of advice. Gosh, I do so many things that I'm like, what is the one piece of advice? My email signature is believe you can. And my kind of go-to mantra is find your happy pace. So I think both of those are really overarching statements that I think I would say, because they're not necessarily specific to one thing, but also very specific to all the things.
I love that. Not specific to one thing, but very specific to all the things. I like that a lot. And you know what? Believe you can. It's great, right? We need to tell I just did a podcast on affirmations. And so that's a perfect affirmation right there. That's something you can tell yourself every day, because even myself, there's a lot of times where I wake up in the morning and go, oh, I can't do that. I'm trying to surf right now. And even this morning, I was out there trying a shortboard, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't think I can surf on a shortboard. And then, I kind of talked myself out of it and thought, you know what, you can do it. Just have that mindset that you can. And it made me stay out there for an hour longer and keep trying. So, you know what, I think, having that affirmation of I believe I can is fantastic. Ashley, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing. This was a blast, and you know what, I actually learned a lot from it. So again, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you around Bali.